Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric and Chad here with Iraq Veteran 8888. Today, we got a very special Gun Gripe episode for you. This one comes from our Twitter desk. All right, I went to Twitter and I posed a question. Hey, what are some of the gun gripes that you guys want to hear? So this one comes from one of our Twitter followers, Chase Whitetail, and he poses the question: is the age of military surplus over? Have we lived through the golden age of Milsurps? So we're going to kind of dive into this. There are some really cool things. Don't get me wrong. There is some light at the end of the tunnel, but we're going to get into the subject. I think you guys are going to find it very interesting, especially if you're into Milsurps like we are. Before we get started, I would like to thank our friends at Sonoran Desert Institute for supporting Gun Gripes. They've got some great distance learning gunsmithing programs, reloading programs, business technology. Really, really great people. They have some wonderful financial incentives, really great instructors, and if you're wanting a career in gunsmithing technology, they are certainly the folks that you need to look into. Check them out, Sonoran Desert Institute, SDI, and tell them we sent you. All right, this is going to make some people angry, and this actually goes back, all right, this video harkens back to a video that Othias and I did together. And we were kind of talking about Milsurp morality and just talking a little bit about, how Milsurps have come along. And, some people have sporterized old Milsurps and people go, oh, you're destroying the collector's value. And that's certainly an error of contention when it comes to this sort of thing. But this harkens back to that video in a very distinct way, because we discussed in a few previous videos about how folks have given us so much crap over the years. For what reason, Chad? Why have people given us crap about Milsurps?
Why are you buying all them Milsurps? Why you want them things? Just an old piece of crap wood gun.
Well, that's not precisely what they go after us about. What they go after us about is, I know you guys have probably seen the comments, they go, you guys are the reason that these guns are so expensive. Because y'all make all these videos and y'all expose people to all these cool Milsurps and you make them more mainstream. And when you make them more mainstream, the price goes up because people go, oh, I want a K31. I want an M39. I want whatever type of Milsurp. And as a result, you have all these people that follow our channel that watch these videos and they go, wow, I want a Chilean Mauser, or I want a Venezuelan Mauser. Well, here's the issue, guys. You can't just go to Venezuelan Mauser Mart and pick one up, at your leisure, okay? They aren't exactly made anymore. So we get into this really interesting little idea of supply and demand. And guys, the supply has relatively been outstripped by, in some cases over 100 years. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of getting towards the bottom of the barrel on availability, boys and girls.
Well, my friends, comrades, welcome to Mosins Mart. Come on in and see our collection.
Okay. Dimitri, come over here. We have a customer.
With like the one dusty M44 on the shelf that's covered in dirt.
Yeah.
We have a great sale on the last remaining firearm, and we're closing our doors, okay? Yes.
Yeah. And it's like, man, one unissued M44 wrapped in cosmoline with the most deluxe, twine. Right, tying this thing up, you can have this M44 for the low price of only $899.
No, you have to do it in the voice of Russia. $8.99 American dollar, okay? Yes.
All right, so that gets us back to the question.
Yes. Oh my God.
Is the golden age of Milsurps past?
I think that we're not quite 40 yet. All right, just to give away our age. Almost. Close enough, to be in a little margin of discomfort, right? But I think that we kind of really got into shooting, back before we were 20 and started getting into Milsurps at that time, and that was kind of like the tail off of that golden age, because when we started shooting, Milsurps were still very prevalently available. There was a good selection of Milsurps, a good selection of different qualities and different grades of each individual, model of firearm. Especially like with Mausers, you had all sorts of different nationalities with Mausers and things like that, and they were relatively affordable. I mean, we were able to, working our normal day jobs, we were able to save a little bit of money. You save up a couple $100, and dang, you can go out and buy yourself a K31, at that point in time. I mean, gosh, I remember the first K31 I bought was like $179, and I paid a whole 10 barking dollars for a handpick fee. You know, and dude, like, we hadn't looked at the price of Milsurps in a long time.
Well,
and, you know, it's like it's insane right now.
well, I have. Okay, now
I don't want to know.
here's the thing. Chad's correct. You know, there's a lot of folks that are in our age range that, you know, many would say that the golden age of Milsurps, you know, that if you didn't set foot in Bannerman's and buy, you know, kegs of military powder and cannons and you know, they were stacking, you know, 6mm Lee Navy rifles in giant gondolas like cordwood, okay? Well, Bannerman's, I believe it wound up blowing up. You know, they stored a lot of powder in there, and I think somebody might have literally, you know, went to go light a cigar or something.
The no smoking
that was the
sign
story of
fell down.
Bannerman. So if my history is correct, I think Bannerman's literally blew up.
Was it like that scene out of Christmas Story?
Maybe.
Or not Christmas Story, Christmas Vacation.
Yeah, yeah. The point is, though, there are people that have different views about what the golden age of military surplus was. And, you know, we will never know what it's like to set foot in Bannerman's and to look at it in all its glory and to have all of that wonderful military surplus under the roof. You know, those days are gone, right? And you know, there's probably folks that were into guns back in the 40s and 50s and 60s. You know, some of the old timers that are out there now that are, you know, been gun owners for 50, 60 years or whatever. Yeah, and those guys probably remember what it's like to go into a hardware store and buy, you know, unissued Chilean Mausers for like $20. I mean, if you look up the old ads, you know, you had all of these random surplus. You know, you could buy a Lee Enfield sniper rifle with the transit case for like $39, you know, $45.
Look, when my
Those days are gone.
yeah, so in the 50s, my grandfather bought a 1929 police issue Luger, German Luger, right? And it was in this nice black box, you know, just a cardboard box, and it had like silver lettering on it and sort of like a German font and things like that. Bought the gun, one magazine with the wooden base plate on it, perfect, like near minty condition, $15. But we got to remember, like $15 back then was a good bit of money, right? And the way we look at things with inflation now, but you know, you look back at the prices in that time frame, and then like even back in the 80s, you know, when surplus was extremely affordable.
I remember when you could go to gun shows, and now remember, this is only, let's see, the age I am, this is, I guess we're talking, this would be like maybe 22 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, somewhere in that ballpark. But I remember being able to go to a gun show, and they would have unissued M9130s on the table for like $39.99. $40, 40 barking dollars, and you could have yourself a rifle. And now, granted, some of them were kind of turds, and they weren't in the greatest of shape, but some of them were in pretty good shape and could be, you know, totally used, no problem. So I guess we have to ask ourselves, what is the appeal of surplus? Why do people buy military surplus in the ways that they do, and why has it grown in leaps and bounds in terms of the collective interest group, the amount of people that are just genuinely interested in Milsurps, and this bubble, right, that is unfortunately kind of busted, right? Well, the reason is because it's cool, right? It's history. You know, you can hold these guns, you can play with them, you can shoot them, and they're just so awesome to be able to hold something that, you know, you've got a rifle that might have been used in some major campaign or used in, you know, you might even be able to determine if a certain gun was used in a certain battle or a certain area, and it's just cool to really nerd out and research all the history and stuff. But the issue becomes that, you know, it's not like these things are growing on trees anymore. You know, all these people that go, oh, the Mosin again is a garbage rod. And you're full of crap if you bought a Mosin. Well, then people are laughing now because the dudes that were like, you know what? I'll play the game. I'll buy a crate of 40 Mosins and pay, you know, $79.99 a piece for them. Now look what they're selling for. A standard scrub gun. I'm talking a 9130, like a regular old infantry rifle. Those things are like freaking $400 or $500.
All right, so
that's the cheapest stuff available.
All right, look, just to put this into perspective, the last time I looked at military surplus and priced Mosins they were selling like locally and online for like $250. And that was just like,
That wasn't that long ago.
God, maybe a couple of years.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, 10 years ago, they were still like a nice unissued type Mosin, right? Like a unissued refurb was like $120, and a case of ammo, a whole crate of 880 rounds of silver tip ammo was like $80.
Yeah.
Dude.
Well, think about when we went to Classic, and all right,
man.
so they got in all those M39s. The gondola is full of M39 service rifles. They got original crates and all that type of stuff. In fact, the very gripes we record are on M39 crates. A lot of people don't realize that. This is just a wool blanket, and these are M39 specific crates that we use as our table here in the studio. And I got these from Classic. And what was so cool about that is, it was so special to make that video because 30 years from now or 40 years from now, some long period of time from now, we're going to look back on that and we're going to go, wow, like look at all the guns.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but those days, there's never going to be something like that happen again, right? So that was like our bannerman's moment, was to go in there and just see gondola upon gondola and get to go through and choose really awesome stuff out of those gondolas.
And look, that was the last batch of M39s and finished rifles as a whole that it had already come into the country, but Classic purchased the last bit of that collection from another importer, right? And all that was like the cherriest stuff. They saved the best for last, literally. Yeah. And we were lucky enough to be able to participate in just kind of unpacking some of that stuff and seeing them examine the guns and grade the guns and sort everything out. And, I mean,
it's a cool experience.
And it's not terribly dissimilar.
If you're a nerd like us.
Yeah, it's not terribly dissimilar from when we were able to go and check out all of the martinis at Atlanta Cutlery, before they closed the firearm side of things down. I mean, there were racks to the ceiling, like you're going into a home improvement store, right? And you're going into the lumber and the building materials area, and it's just racks of product, right? Well, there were pallets of cardboard boxes full of martinis, full of bayonets, full of flints, full of all kinds of cool old surplus from the Nepalese cache, right? We'll never experience that again because all those guns are gone. They're all gone.
It was so cool to be able to put on a pair of gloves and walk through there and literally sort through history. And you got yak grease and all kind of nasty dirt, right from the palace floor of the palace in Nepal. I mean, how many people can say they've got to experience that? It's just really cool. Now, what happened with that group of guns? They didn't get all sold to customers. I think that International Military Antiques bought those guns back. I think there was like a business partnership there that might have dissolved or something. I don't want to take turns tell tales out of school, but I believe that they ended up getting those guns back. So there are a lot of the Nepalese cache guns that are still available, and they're still uncovering a lot of really cool jewels in that collection. So, for fans of the Martini Henry and the Snyder and the Brunswick and the Baker and some of the odd flintlocks, I mean, there's boarding swords, cannons, Byra guns, all kind of cool stuff that's still available. So I guess the big question is in this sea of military surplus that's out there. I mean, look at all of the major wars that have wound down over the years. Wars are winding down, right? I mean, and governments in this modern age have made it much harder for surplus firearms to find their way out into the back into the populace. The only thing that we have now, even close to the federal government, even coming close to doing anything to do a solid by gun owners, is the civilian marksmanship program. Now, the CMP is still in place, and oddly enough, the CMP still gets a lot of great Garands out of military surplus. I don't know how many of those they've had stored over the years, but remember a couple of years ago, they released a whole bunch of Colt 1911s, and they had a bunch of M1 carbines, M1 Garands. For a while, they had some Krags and 03s that were coming up, a whole bunch of Kimber target rifles, some man accuracy devices. So the good old days of the CMP might be past us now at this point, but the CMP still does a great job of making, at least at a minimum, I think 1911s and Garands and maybe some carbines available to civilians for marksmanship.
Yeah.
purposes.
It definitely is unfortunate now. Like if a youngster's coming up, a teenager, and they turn 18 and they want to buy a surplus gun because they've seen them in videos and things like that, or they may have read about them. You go out and you look for a Mosin, and then you got to pay $400 or $500 for a Mosin just to get started, and then you got to pay what, $250 or more for a crate of ammo these days, or even just a 10.
Yeah.
I mean, the 10s are expensive as all get out now, just for 440 rounds, let alone an entire crate of 880. But
well, if you're the Taliban, they just leave them behind on pallets.
Oh, Lord Almighty, I know.
So I mean, I'd like to know what I missed out on that to get my surplus MRAP with a Barrett on top and some nice new night vision and
now look,
all of that.
That's the kind of surplus that I want to go shopping for.
Yeah, I mean, God, what's a guy got to do to get a surplus MRAP around here,
But considering the surplus that we've bought over the years, and just thinking about what it takes to get into it nowadays, it's very disheartening, and especially like when we were just starting working and stuff, like we were poor, like in some senses, like me with kids and a family, like I'm still poor. My kids like ring me for everything I'm worth these days. But it's just crazy. Like looking at these prices. I mean, we were seeing K31s. Some of them are over $1,000. I mean,
I tried to tell y'all.
M39s like $600-700. I mean, K98s, German Mausers,
over $1,000.
Over $1,000 for not even like a really great one. You want something...
A Russian capture.
Yeah, you want something minty with the, markings and stuff still intact. You're talking probably over $2,000.
Yeah.
And then, like, the days of going on, like, local forums and things and engaging in private sales, that's really kind of winding down because people now, they're more educated. They know what this stuff's worth, and they're not just going to let it go for pennies on the dollar.
And you're seeing a lot less of good quality Milsurps finding their way into, like, pawn shops.
Yep.
I mean... Like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you could hop in your vehicle, ride around in your neighborhood, and go to a bunch of different pawn shops in the local area, and you could usually peel away a cool Milsurp or a nice old vintage Smith or something, or there was always something neat that you could find that if you were savvy and you knew what you were looking at and you were good at haggling and bargaining, you could get a great deal, And there are still some deals out there. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. But it's getting harder and harder with the, advent of, just internet forums and YouTube videos and just all the information that's out there. It's good, right? Like, it's great to have good information. I mean, look at Ian, right? Ian is literally like a philosopher of gun knowledge. Like, he's like the Socrates of gun knowledge. I mean, that guy will sit there and just go off the rails, right? And just talk about... He'll tell you the guy's daughter's name that made the stock, or whatever. So, like, look, there's so much great information out there. You got a guy like Ian, or you've got, all these guys that make this great content, right? Like Cap and Ball, that channel over there. I forget which country. I think he's in Hungary, or one of those countries over there. I think he's Hungarian, if I'm not mistaken. But, dude, he does these great breakdowns, like, of all the history related to, like, a Werndl or a Camelot or some random old black powder gun. So the information that's out there, there's so much great information by so many well-qualified people that's great, right? It's great to be able to learn and know exactly what you're dealing with. But it also has an unintended consequence. It creates this environment where now you've got people that are so well informed on Milsurps and they know about all this old stuff, right? You can run into some 14-year-old kid that'll sit there and go, the K31 was designated in 1931 and was in service until 1958. Oh, and around 1941 they switched from beechwood to walnut stocks. And it's like, kid, who are you? And it's like, it's knowledge that traditionally would have been associated with a much higher level of enthusiasts that really got in the weeds. But now the information is so much more common that people get enthusiastic about it. Oh, I want to go buy this gun. But because there's so few of them, then the price just starts to go crazy. So there's an unintended consequence. It's great that the knowledge is out there and that people learn about them, but the more people know about them, they're in demand,
So it's not terribly dissimilar from, just a concept like the NFA and transferable machine guns. I mean, after '86, when newly manufactured machine guns were not available for civilian ownership anymore at that point, you had to just get what was on the registry already. the price started trickling up. I mean, it was a slow road at first, but during the 90s and then during the 2000s, when more and more people kind of came into the fold and realized, hey, you can own a machine gun, but this is the process to do it. So it's the same kind of concept. Finite supply. Okay, there's no more Milsurps being made. I mean, that's kind of right there in the name, military surplus, right? So finite supply and like almost infinitesimal demand at this point. So it's crazy to think about, and living through it and just like looking back 20 years, it's nuts. It's almost unfathomable to think, just what's happened in that time frame. And even today, Milsurps are still a great investment. All right, just like they were.
Even if you do have to pay more for them, they're never going to go down in
No,
price.
absolutely not. But just like 10 years ago, they were a good investment. 20 years ago, they were a good investment. 30 years ago, still the same thing.
10 minutes ago, they're a good investment.
So,
all right,
anyways.
now there's light at the end of the tunnel. All right, and I'm going to catch a little flack, maybe, perhaps. All right.
Is it the light?
There's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. Now, there's still surplus coming out from various parts of the world. It's just not at the level that it used to, not at the quality it used to be. We're kind of getting down to the bottom of the barrel on a lot of the traditional military surplus. You notice if you go on various places like, I know, Palmetto State Armory, there's a few other websites, J&G, whoever. I mean, there's a ton of different websites. If they're dealing in surplus, classic, whoever, you'll notice like those M91 Kirkanos that they are practically giving this freaking things away. Like I think at one point I saw them on sale for like $139, $149 or something. And so you're talking a Milsurp that, for the bargain price of 150 smackaroos, you've got a rifle.
But remember back in the day when shops would pay you to take them out of inventory? I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Dude, but I mean, like, they couldn't give them away.
There certainly was a time when Carcanos were so undesirable that people were just making lamps out of them.
Dude, they were literally
no
like
one wanted them.
The red-headed stepchildren of Milsurps.
The point is, there is still some Milsurps floating around. There is some new surplus coming in. All right? So that is at least a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. And, all right, think about this. There was a time when, all right, that Nepalese cache, for instance, that they brought in, that was a groundbreaking discovery. Not only was that a great discovery for military enthusiasts everywhere that love these old military rifles, it was also an archaeological discovery in a way, because you're talking a literal cache of treasure. I mean, literal treasure. And is that to say that there's not some dusty palace somewhere in the world that hasn't been touched by someone, an exporter that wants to buy the guns and bring them in? That's here nor there. I mean, there's probably still some undiscovered treasure troves out there that will see the light of day and will be brought back in. And it's exciting to think about that one day you wake up and there's going to be some breaking news. Oh, a cache of Milsurps discovered in wherever, right?
Swiss government releases, a boatload of K-31s.
Right.
I mean, whatever.
Yeah, it happens. Okay, so it's not over. There's still undiscovered treasure out there, and you have to remain positive. And I will add this, that not only is there light at the end of the tunnel in terms of there being undiscovered treasures and still some decent surplus out there, I will add that there has never been a better time to be a gun owner than now. So granted, while the surplus has begun to dry up, especially the good quality stuff has long dried up, the other light at the end of the other tunnel, if you decide to go this way, is firearms have never been more affordable in terms of new stuff, right? You can go on PSA and buy an AR for $499. That is a really good quality gun. So there's never been a better way in terms of a financial means to protect yourself with the least amount of money to get the most gun for the least amount of money, right? So you could almost argue that some of these modern guns have replaced Milsurps in terms of just their, great value, right, that we would say. Now, what I would just add to that really quick, when it comes to, let's just say, the value of these particular guns in terms of, these $500 ARs and stuff, they've made the AR and the AK and these other types of rifles more readily accessible to a wider variety of people, all right? So look at when we were 17, 18 years old, and we were like, all right, we're ready to build our first AR or buy an AR. I mean, back then, 25 years ago, you weren't going to find a decent AR for $500. You weren't going to find a decent AR for $800. You would have to spend, well over $1,000 to even come close to getting something worth owning.
Look, I'm gonna tell you, when I built my
And the
first
selection wasn't nearly as good.
look, when I built my first AR back then, right? The only receivers that were available were like Olympic Arms, DPMS, Colt. Like, there was not a huge selection of just stripped receivers available if you wanted to build your own gun. Not like there is now. And gosh, I paid $150 back then for just a stripped receiver, right? And like, look at what
You're
Anderson.
a poor college student. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, like, look at what you can buy Anderson receivers for these days. I mean, less than half of what I spent almost 20 years ago, right?
So if that doesn't tell you right there,
all right, and
things are changing.
this concept brings me back to something that we've said in the past. All right, like we think about the golden age, the good old days. All right, we always say it. The good old days are now, right? So the golden age of surplus may have passed, but the good old days of buying guns and such is right now. Like, 10 years from now, we'll look back on this moment and be like, boy, I sure wish I could get a brick of 22 ammo for, less than $800.
Or 10 years from now, someone's going to go, oh, I remember in that gun gripe where Eric and Chad were talking about K31s being $700, and you're going to go on some outlet and be like, holy crap, they're $2,500 now.
Man.
Well, I should have bought one during the good old days. So it is true. The good old days are now.
Yeah.
Don't sit on the sidelines of life. If something makes you happy and you really want it bad enough, find a way to make it so. Sell some crap you don't want, or find a way to make it so. And look, collect what you can afford. Don't think that you have to. I mean, don't get me wrong, right? Like, we did the video on the Fallschirmjäger. Okay, that's an awesome gun. My friend Brent that owns Ox Ranch, that's one of the guns out of his personal collection. All right, and yeah, that gun's worth literally, like, I think 7 figures. Like, it's a very, very rare and expensive gun. Am I going to buy a Fallschirmjäger in my lifetime? Probably not. If I had a 7-figure amount of money to spend on a gun, would I buy that gun? Probably not, right? Is it cool to shoot and show you guys and we can all live vicariously through how cool that is? Absolutely. It's so cool, right? So, you kind of collect within the area that you can afford, right? I remember, I don't want to prolong this video, but just for some of you young guys that are getting into Milsurps and you want to learn a little bit, I'll just give you an idea. Like, I went through a phase where I was buying a lot of Mausers. I went through a Mosin phase and I went through a Mauser phase. And I think at one point I probably owned about 16 Turkish Mausers of various types, and I was getting ones with all the different Farsi markings on it, and the different manufacturers, and this one's got the low thumb cut, the shortened Gewehr 98 shank, this one was built on this and on that, and I had like every variant of that gun you could possibly ask for. And I think at one point I went through a phase where I got rid of a lot of them, and I kept a few that were kind of the coolest ones. One of them is an old forestry carbine, which is a really rare Turkish Mauser. But the thing is, you collect what you can afford. And at the time, they were so cheap, there was no reason not to collect them. I mean, I was paying, like, in some cases, $150, maybe $100 for these things. You could go into a pawn shop and find a Turkish Mauser for $99. So it's okay to collect what is in your wheelhouse, what you can afford to collect. You know?
I mean, like, hell, at that time, like, those type of Mausers were attainable for us. But then you get on like you see the ads in Shotgun News for like Mitchell's Mausers, and here's these nice refurb German Mausers and such, and they're like
nice.
$800 or whatever, and like, oh man, that's way too much, especially when all the other surplus is like $200 or less. I mean, like, some of the nicest surplus rifles at the time, the K31s, were less than $200. Like, arguably the most accurate surplus rifle you can buy.
Hindsight being what it is, I shouldn't
more.
have bought any of those Turks, and I should have just sunk every spare scrap of money that I could in the K31s. I think now I've got like maybe 8 or 9 of them, and they're great guns. I love them. It's like absolutely my favorite Milsurp is a K31, and they're fantastic. And I've really come to love the M39s a lot. There was a time I remember when I bought my first M39. It was in a sporter stock. I've got a story on this on another video if you want to check it out, but I'm not going to bore you guys. I know this video is getting a little long already, but man, I could sit here and reminisce about Milsurps all day, but my first M39, dude, it was a magical experience pulling the trigger on that thing for the first time. It's like, wow, this thing's accurate. Man, what a great gun.
Yep.
You know, it's like, it's something about a vintage Winchester, like picking it up, acquire your sight picture, squeeze the trigger, and that round hits right where your eyeballs are looking. There's just something so magical about those old Milsurps and the old school guns and stuff. They just, man, they're so much fun to play with. And you know, I know we do a lot of stuff with machine guns and ARs and PCCs and pistols and all this modern stuff and suppressors. You know, we've got a bunch of suppressor videos that Chad makes. But at the end of the day, my passion will always be black powder. I love military surplus. Those are the things that got me into guns the most hardcore, was all the cool military surplus that was out there.
Yeah, it makes me think, you know, I don't remember the last time, this is bad, I don't remember the last time I pulled the trigger on a Milsurp. I had my hands on them in the safe the other day, but I don't remember the last time I shot a K31 or one of my M39s.
It's been a minute. So maybe
Might need to remember that.
Yeah, maybe that is a great opportunity for us to get out and re-explore these guns. You know, we are setting up a new range. I'm not going to disclose exactly where, but we are going to have access to a little bit longer range than what we've traditionally had at the farm. So maybe we can take like K31, M39, some of these cool old Milsurps, and push them out to distances a little further than what we've done in previous videos. If you guys don't know, we do have some videos where we've taken Milsurps out to 600 yards. That's the furthest distance that we have available to us at the time, but we're going to have close to 1,000 available. So who knows? Maybe you'll see some iron sight action. I believe the last K31 video we made was when we had Tim from Military Arms Channel hanging out with us, and we went up to our buddy's place who has a mile-long range, and we were shooting the K31 with irons out to 1,000 yards. That's the longest range I think I've ever filmed shooting Milsurps, is out to 1,000. So if you want to check that video out, it's out there. We were just having some fun with that. But we should totally re-explore that concept.
Absolutely.
Take the ones that shoot the best out of our collection, dial in a good load, and get out there and get some hits out to 1,000 or further.
The only thing is I'm about to break open a new case of GP11.
Yeah, that ammo's been hard to get. All right, now I'll just add one more thing before we leave. All right, on the long-range Milsurp shooting end of things, if you want to see some really crazy stuff, check out my buddy Ernest. His channel's called Mag 30th. And Ernest is a really, really awesome dude, and he is an amazing shot and a brilliant hand loader. So if you want to see some really crazy feats of accuracy with iron-sighted Milsurps, check out Mag 30th. M-A-G 30th, 30th, 30th. Mag 30th. His name's Ernest. Really good dude. He's out in California. I haven't talked to him in a long time. I have to get back with him and see how he's doing. But there's so much great stuff out there to learn about this stuff. And the surplus end, look, it's not the end, right? There is plenty of surplus coming in. You just have to be savvy. You got to keep your eyes peeled. There's going to be some great discovery eventually, and I can't wait to see the look on everybody's faces when we're like, oh, wow, look at this cool cache that we found in some random corner of the globe, you know. But until that day, stay savvy, I suppose, and just keep your eyes peeled, and I guess you're going to have to get to them before I do. I mean, it's survival of the fittest at this point, I suppose.
Hello, friends. Well, thank you for shopping at Mosins. Okay, come back and see us. Well, never, because we're closing.
I mean...
No.
I find it hard to believe that there's not some 9130s floating around somewhere.
Like, oh, look at this cache we drug up out of the sea, okay? Very nice.
Just a little surface rust.
Little surface rust. It'll clean up just fine. Steel wool ballistol, as you Americans call it, yes. Okay.
All right. Thanks for watching. And look, Chase Whitetail, thank you for the commentary that led us to this gun gripe. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. We got a lot of great stuff. I run my mouth a little bit. But make sure you follow us on Twitter at IraqVeteran8888. Also on Instagram, IraqVeteran8888 official. Also check us out on Society. You definitely want to check that app out. No censorship, no bullcrap. There is a little small fee you have to pay every month to utilize the full features of the app. But if you go to Society, we're on there. Iraq Veteran 8888. Also Jared from Guns and Gadgets and Mike from Mr. Guns and Gear. Those guys are on there. And we're trying to build a great community of people over at Society. So download the app, check it out. And man, it's great. It's all encrypted. There's no censorship, no horse crap. It is a great setup. So check us out on Society as well. So thank you guys very much. Have a great day. Many more videos on the way. We'll see you soon.
Take care, guys.